we could go ahead. We'll talk about episode 6 here. Episode 6, we kind of transition, right? We're back now to Neverland Island, and we're reacquainted with everyone that's going on. So episode 5 absolutely was a standalone by itself. Only was about that story. So the rest of the episodes 6, 7, 8 are all very much connected and continuous. So we'll kind of go through those. So episode 6. So after Nibs had her like little freak out, right? And kind of attacked, right, Dame, I would say. Didn't like physically harm her, but was very threatening. She's been taken offline, right? And we have like kind of a group of people that are trying to figure out how to fix her, I guess would be the best way to put it, right? So you got Adam, you got Dame, right, and Arthur. They're all kind of sitting there trying to figure out, like, hey, what's the best way to deal with this? And Adam suggests, well, you know what? Like, if her experience or what her issues were happened because of what happened when they went to the crash site, maybe we should just ditch those memories, and that'll fix her, right? That's a suggestion, right? So Arthur is like, no, that's a terrible idea. But then Dame is like, well, I guess we could do that. And we'll see if that fixes the issue. So Arthur disagrees. Dame agrees to do this. And this is where we see that Adam ends up firing Arthur because Arthur is disagreeing and kind of for insubordination. So we kind of see that all happen. And this is where, I want to talk more about some of these characters because I just start to get kind of, I just get bogged down with what their true intentions are, right? And Dame's is a really weird one for me, right? So she's a psychiatrist, right? She seems to have this motherly instinct, right? Or she wants to support them in a positive way. But then when like push comes to shove, she seems to not always work in their best interest. And that was really confusing to me because
well, I would say she's not really working the interest of her husband. So it's kind of like the good mother, bad wife kind of vibe,
Well, okay, so let's take that, right? So because to me, right, I would think it would make more sense for the roles to be reversed, right? So Arthur's the IT guy, so he would think cold and calculating that, hey, if I just take out this part of her brain, then we're going to fix her, right? Whereas Dame should be the one that's like, oh, well, I'm a psychiatrist. I can talk her through what she's going through to fix her. So for me, it almost felt like the role should have been different, where it didn't make sense that the IT guy was more compassionate than the psychiatrist, who I would feel like is going to be the one that's a part of it. So,
but I'll say this: I kind of appreciate that role reversal because it's not exactly playing into your expectations of what you would think this particular individual would do, right?
Okay, that's fair. That's fair.
But also keep in mind too, like everybody doesn't, meet a happy ending, in either an alien movie or TV show. So
no, very true, very true. So yeah, like I said, I always just felt that was weird. I felt like when I think the psychiatrist, I think about how they talk about her, being a mother, and there's a point where she kind of like embraces Curly and everything. Like it just feels like the show's trying to show that she's motherly at times, and then show totally detached at others, and it just inconsistent experience for me.
Well, let me ask you this then. Like, I mean, because ostensibly she's supposed to come off as like a matronly figure who's helping these children understand how to navigate the world in these new bodies, right?
Yes.
Could you honestly say that you would have appreciated the show a lot more if she'd been cold and calculating instead of like this maternal figure kind of being that that we see Arthur display, but not as prevalent as Dame Sylvia, because I kind of get the feeling that she presents this facade of someone who wants to be kind and caring, but she kind of has her own thing going on. Because remember,
that's fair. Yeah, I got you. I'm on here.
Because remember when Adam makes that threat, like she says, yeah, I can definitely do it. And even when Arthur says, well, hey, like, what are you doing? Like, she just sticks her ground. She doesn't stand up for her husband, which you would think, like, if she really was a caring individual, she would actually try to do her best to kind of convince Adam that, hey, maybe you're flying off the handle too quickly, maybe reconsider things. But no, like, she's like, yeah, fuck this guy. Like, I can totally do his job. Like,
yeah.
I mean, if you want to shoot him, that's fine.
Hey, that's totally fair, right? I still feel like I would have liked to see if you wanted her to be more cold and calculating. I don't feel like they showed it enough for me to appreciate that that's what they're trying to play off. I felt like if you're going to show her be maternal and everything like that, then you want to play off of that. And I just don't feel like that is. So I guess bygones be bygones. I just don't. It just wasn't maybe the route I would have gone as far as how they were trying to show or represent her character when I was looking at it. So, but outside of that, right? So they decide, hey, we're gonna do a little, snip on the memory, right, for Nibs. Immediately after that happens, right, Wendy goes in to check on her, right, and this is literally the next scene, right? So she has her memory kind of taken, and then she wakes up and Wendy's there. And starts to chat about, hey, how's everything going? You were talking about how you're pregnant, and I just was checking on you. And then Nibs is like, well, what do you mean? I've never talked about that. What are you talking about? And then Wendy kind of continues the conversation, and you see Nibs gets more and more frustrated because she feels like Wendy's lying to her because the last memory that she had was prior to the crash. And the whole time I'm thinking this, I'm like, how can you not converse with the other children prior to doing this, right? Because someone's going to bring up what's been happening. Why would you ever feel like it's a good choice to not hey, guys, we're going to have a team meeting about what happened with Nibs. She's going to seem a little bit off, but please just work with her. But they don't have anything. It just felt like really cheap writing. You can't have these people doing all this stuff and then not kind of, I guess, maybe address or even just think rationally that, hey, Nibs is going to have a terrible reaction to this. And the last thing that needs to happen is you're going to have a bunch of kids talking about events that she's not going to remember.
But see, Lee, you're assuming that this is a Karen corporation. So.
No, that's true. That's true. But if they want this to work, right, I do think you have to at least have some iota of caring. Otherwise, it's going to fail, and then you're going to have issues. But yes, you're right. But none of these corporations in the future feel like good ones to work for because they're all kind of shitty, and people are constantly being abused. So we have that going on. So now Kirsch is kind of off island right now with Boy Kavalier because they're having this dispute, right, with Whale and Yutani, or I think it's just Yutani at this stage. So they're having a dispute with Yutani regarding the ship and everything, and they have a mediator that's there to kind of talk through it. So they're kind of off island dealing with that. So while Kirsch is off island, he talks with Toodles, right, his little protege.
Remember, Toodles has since changed his name, so
yes, to Isaac. Yes, and I'm sorry, I apologize for the sake of not changing names because there's already a lot of characters in this. But you're right. Yes, so Toodles had renamed himself as Isaac.
I'll be honest with you. I don't know why they went that route, but it's
it wasn't. Yeah, it happened the episode before, and as we'll find out, it wasn't that important, right? Because Toodles / Isaac, right? So he goes in there and starts to feed all these specimens, right? And then he gets to this fly enclosure, right? And unfortunately, there's a malfunction on the door, right? So something's jacked up with the door. So what does he do? He decides, hey, if I can't feed it through this little feeding tube thingy that we have set up, I'm just gonna kind of open up the door and I'm gonna physically walk into the freaking enclosure in order to drop this tray of
it's mechanical parts,
motherboards, and
it was a bunch of scrap metal and everything. Yeah, so
exactly.
So right the bat, that should have been a warning flag, but kids.
Yeah, right. Kids, they're stupid. So he walks into this enclosure, right? And he walks into the enclosure. Now the the sheep octopus eye thing, it takes this as opportunity, so it kind of startles Toodles / Isaac, and it causes him to like lose his footing, and he gets trapped in this room with these flies, right? And these flies, they really feed on like mechanical things, right? They don't really feed on like organic material. They feed on mechanical things. So unfortunately for our boy Toodles here, he is eaten by the flies.
Yeah, he's
and the flies
he's liquefied. Yeah.
Yes, right. And this is the first time we actually saw the flies, right? Because there's 5 creatures. I think this is the first time we even saw them, right? Did you think it didn't happen earlier, right? I don't remember seeing the flies up until now.
Yeah, because initially I thought they were the same as the leech creatures, but the way that they look, it's kind of different because because they live in like that little weird beehive thing in the corner.
Exactly. Yeah. So kind of weird, right? I always thought that was weird. It was like, okay, we got introduced really late to these creatures, and I don't know if it was like you purposely held off on it because you want it to be like, oh, they devour like machine stuff, so the synths are going to be weak to them. So I don't know. I would imagine that's what they're kind of going for, but it was
here's my question. So so in episode 5 in this episode here, whenever that octopus creature is present, it seems like shit seems to go down, right?
Yes.
I'm wondering, is that creature sort of like doing something, or are they manipulating like the tech around them to make all this happen? Because I assume there are like fail safes and everything in place to kind of make sure like this doesn't happen. So I'm wondering if maybe the creature isn't like emitting some sort of like telepathic field or something to kind of manipulate the tech into having it go haywire,
So Luca, I'm going to answer your question with the quote that you just said about 2 minutes ago. This corporation doesn't treat people very well. So, if you're going to play fast and loose with a lot of things, then you're going to play fast and loose with this, right? So, it's interesting because I know that Kirsch is obviously kind of sees this happening too, and he doesn't intervene. All right. So once again, Kirsch,
but how exactly can he intervene? That's
of course. Yeah, you're right. He can't do anything about it. But I did find it very interesting that he's kind of viewing everything. But yeah, I didn't really interpret that like that. I kind of thought in the back of my head, like, I wonder if Kirsch kind of was like sabotaged it, right? Because then,
but then that would mean he would have had to sabotage what happened on the Maginot then.
Oh yeah, no. It was more of like kind of a fleeting thought that I had, right? Because I was like, this is a guy, he's interested to see what happens with everything. So I was curious if he was like, well, maybe he wanted to see how the synths would be impacted by having this creature kind of attack them as like, kind of like an experiment, right? Like you give it live food and see what happens type of thing. But I kind of was like working my way backwards. I'm like, that seems like a little bit too much. I think it was just an honest kind of like accident. Toodles being a kid, he just, does a dumb kid thing. So I do think that it just was kind of like a weird thing to happen. And I think that overall, I think that Kirsch, or there's so few people that have access to what's actually going on in the lab that whatever alarm or siren or any alarm bells that went off, it would have only been a handful of people that actually know about it. And it was probably just Kirsch at that stage. Yeah, that's how I kind of looked at it.
And it's a restricted area too. So obviously, organic beings are not going to be allowed in there.
Yeah. So that's how I kind of looked at it. But yeah, there's a lot of interesting things because you have to kind of question, motives for people and what they're doing. And it definitely did make me question a few things. So unfortunately, Toodles / Isaac, our first lost boy to be killed, and he's killed off here by these flies. So we have that kind of happening. We have Joe, right? So Joe bumps into Arthur. Arthur, who's now newly looking for a position. So he's chatting with Arthur, and he's kind of saying like he wants to leave the island and take Wendy with him. So Arthur, a true bro to the situation, he helps disable the tracker on all the Lost Boys. But Arthur also notices that he's disabling all of them. The one for Toodles, his tracker isn't working. So he sees that this lab is the last place that he was. So you see Arthur goes down there, and we see Slightly is there. Now, for some context, right? Slightly has been trying really hard to lure someone into this lab, right? For Morrow. So we see he tried earlier to lure Joe in, but Joe got pulled away for something. So now Slightly has Arthur show up, and Slightly does not miss an opportunity here because as Arthur goes in the room to try to like fix everything and try to help Toodles, Slightly kind of locks him in the room with the xenomorph, the egg, and the facehugger comes up and attaches himself to Arthur, pretty much killing him. And this death hurt me a lot. I'm not gonna lie. Now, Arthur has not been a super critical character in this, right? You know, he's been around quite a bit. You know who he is. But the one thing for me for Arthur's character was he seemed to be the only one that genuinely cared about the kids, right? Everybody else was out there for their own stuff, for their own, you know, personal needs and what have you. But Arthur always kind of felt like he was sticking up and questioning what they were doing. Now, I'm not saying that Arthur was like, you know, a perfect person or the beacon of everything that's good, but he was the only one that I genuinely felt cared a little bit about the Lost Boys and what they're going through. So to have him be the one that gets impacted or gets face hugged was brutal to see, because like, you know, so many of these other characters is just like, God, you know, I would love to see them, something bad happen to them. Arthur was the one I was hoping that wouldn't do it. And
and we know, and we know what happens to anyone who gets face hugged. You know, it's not pretty.
Yes, it is not. So, was brutal for me. I was sorry to see that. I'm like, oh, you son of a bitch, Slightly. Like, I know you're a stupid kid, but you probably killed the only person that genuinely was trying to look out for your best interest. And it just stings that much more about his, well, not really his passing at this stage, but what he went through. So,
I mean, I will say this: Slightly is a bit of an asshole.
Yeah, I don't like Slightly at all. He's my least. He's tied for my least favorite of the Lost Boys.
That one scene where you know, Joe's hanging out with the Lost Boys, and he just walks up and he's like, he can't be here. Like, if my brothers can't be here, then he can't be here either. And I'm like, dude, what the fuck is wrong with you? Like, just get over it, man. Like, it's not like any of the other. It's not like any of the other kids have their families there, right? Joe was just kind of there as like something. It was just circumstantial, yeah. Like, but I mean, like throughout the entire, you know, series, like he just behaves in a way that just makes you think, you know, maybe he like deserves to be smacked around a little bit in order to like get some because I'll say this, even though Smee, you know, does come off as a bit of an immature brat because he's laughing and joking all the time. I can sort of empathize with him because, you know, as a kid, like that's how kids are naturally. Like you just want to joke around, have fun. Slightly he represents like the worst part of being a kid, is just being, you know, immature and stupid and thinking I can do this all on my own, and then you end up making things worse. To your point, he ends up killing Arthur by having that face hugger like land on his face. So as I'm watching these episodes, I'm like, I hope to God something happens to him, because I do not want him to walk away from the island, you know, in one piece, you know.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, even Isaac, I'll say this, even even Isaac, whom I never really developed that much of a bond for because I really didn't get to see him that much. Exactly. I felt more for him than I did for Slightly.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I mean, because Toodles, no matter what you say about him, yes, he was very much underdeveloped, right? As I would say for most of these characters are. But, you know, at least for him, like, he seemed to have just this genuine passion for, like, hey, you know, he looks up to Kirsch as kind of like a fatherly figure, so to say. Yeah. You know, and Kirsch kind of like helps, like, I guess, create that bond or that relationship.
He sort of reciprocates it, yeah, like in a weird sort of way.
Like, he's a very, like, it's a very simple thing that you know, Toodles goes through. But still, you know, he doesn't ever come off as an unlikable character. I would argue he's easily the most likable character out of them.
Yeah.
We'll talk a little bit more about Smee because I do really like Smee, and we'll talk about that in the next episode. But
I was gonna say, like, out of all the characters, like, I could sort of identify with Smee because I can remember myself, and you probably did the same thing too when you were a kid, like just laughing and messing around, just like whacking your friends and just saying, hey, stop it, that kind of stuff. So he's the most childlike out of all the Lost Boys, and I kind of like. I thought it was kind of endearing, like, he's a bit one-dimensional, but at the same time, it's like you can't help but not like the guy.
Yeah, agreed. So, that's episode 6, right? So, this leads us very neatly into